Okay. I'll just keep admitting people here. I'll bring up our agenda for the day.
Shannon, I'll make sure to admit folks and monitor the chat. And I'll ping you if I notice anything.
Oh, thanks, Sean. That's going to be really helpful. Okay, let's find the agenda. Okay, can everybody see my agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and kick off now. Thank you all for being here today. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss implementation guidance for the Economic Security for All Round 2. I'd like to do a little quick check-in and see who we have on the call. So I'm going to just go down the list of the LWDBs and call you out and just let us know if you are on the call. Olympic.
Hi, yep, I'm here, and I think this is Jeff Allen with Olympic Educational Service District, contracting with Olympic Workforce Development Council, and I believe Lucy Bench from the OWDC is with us too.
Great. Northwest.
Am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. Hi.
Hi, Alex. Welcome.
Here.
Snohomish. Joy or Mary on the call? Okay. Pack Mountain.
Pack Mountain's here.
Great. Skill Source.
Yes, Skill Source North Central is here. Lisa Romine sitting in for Emily.
Excellent. Welcome. South Central.
South Central here.
Great. Eastern.
Yeah, we're here. Thanks, Shannon.
Great. Thanks, Rod. And Sea
Mandra, I am here. Mike will be joining us a little bit later today.
Oh, great. So are you the new EcSA program manager?
Yes.
Oh, great. Welcome. Been waiting to meet you. And then Snohomish. Is there anyone from Snohomish on the call?
I'm Heidi Schabel with Workforce Snohomish. I believe Mary and Joy are also supposed to join at some point.
Oh, great.
Mary just hopped on, Shannon.
Excellent. Thank you. And I don't know why
Sorry, Mary's a few minutes late.
Welcome, Mary.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry to be that late.
Oh, no problem. We're just getting started. So from ESD, I am Shannon Brundle, and I am the EcSA program manager. And John Trucca is here as well, and he's going to be helping with notes and filling in on questions as needed. Thanks, John. So for those not available today to be here today, we are recording this meeting, and we'll be sending that recording out following the meeting and adding it to our Workforce Professional Center site. The Workforce Professional Center site has EcSA resources available, such as various assessments, intake forms, career and goal attainment plans, DSHS database access request forms, DSHS cold calling script and tracker, and partner contact info. So I encourage you to look there if you're looking for resources on the program. So today we're going to hear from Madeline Levin from Social Policy Research. Madeline and her team are the third-party evaluators for EcSA. She's going to give some background and discuss the evaluation process and timeline. SPR will also be completing the participant exit survey, and we will be offering an information session / training on that at a later time. And there'll be more info following this meeting on that. We'll also be doing a quick review of the ETO guidance. Please take some time this week to review the guidance with your team and let us know if you identify any issues so that we can update it to be as useful as possible. We'll also review the quarterly narrative and outcome reports. In addition to the feedback we received today, we will be receiving feedback on both of these documents until the end of the week. And thank you in advance for providing your feedback. And finally, we'll review our next steps, including the partnership and implementation plan presentations that will begin tomorrow with Pack Mountain. So thank you, Pack Mountain, for kicking us off. I'm excited to see the presentations over the course of the next week. So now I will pass it over to Madeline for her presentation. Let's see, Madeline, do you want me to load the PowerPoint or would you like?
Share if I'm allowed to. It's easy for me to do so.
Sure. Let me stop sharing. And now you should be able to.
All right. Does that look okay?
Yeah, thanks, Madeline.
Sure. I feel like I'm finally getting better with Teams. I don't know about you all, but it's been a learning curve for me because I'm so used to Zoom, and they're just slight little differences. And so hey, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm representing the evaluation team, which also does include, I always like to make sure I mention, Kone Consulting, which is located there in Edmonds, Washington. I'm going to introduce you to our approach for doing evaluation and doing this evaluation in particular, just kind of go over what the whole thing consists of, and then what you guys can expect next steps, first off from hearing from the evaluation team. And this should only take 10 or 15 minutes, according to Shannon and my agreement. So who is Social Policy Research Associates? We're a small company. We're based in Oakland, California. We have less than 50 staff members. I don't know, we're kind of 45 or so. We've been around for 30 years now, and our kind of sweet spot really is on workforce programs. We've participated in all the big reviews of WIOA, the recent one with Mathematica, and also the WIA preceding Department of Labor study of how that program was implemented. And so some of you had visits from us when we were doing our WIOA implementation study, and we've been around and about and have staff located in Portland. That's the closest to Washington. Two of our expert staff, Kristen Wolf and Jesse Ettinger, are located in Portland. So here's the team. I just mentioned Jesse. She's the associate director of our workforce division. She's the lead of all of our technical assistance work and is really expert in this area. I come from a SNAP and SNAP ENT background, so we kind of balance each other that way on the project team. Marianne Nagoita is our brain trust. He's our primary investigator. He's a sociologist who develops the protocols and does all the, fancy work with data. I'm really excited to bring on a Washington native onto our team. Miguel Gasca is going to be our survey lead for the participant survey, and he grew up in central or eastern Washington and is a graduate from Washington State University and is excited, especially working with the Latinx and Spanish-speaking community in the heart of the state, because that's where he really grew up. And then Yvette Gutierrez is another site lead who's fluent in Spanish and has been working up with the Benton Franklin site. And Alicia Kone, as I mentioned, from Kone Consulting, is a really leading national expert on SNAP policy, SNAP ENT, and is a former director of SNAP and TANF in Washington State. So it's super great having her on our team as well. So we really have been, I just wanted to say a little bit about our approach and our values. This has really become even more so as it's gone on, a developmental evaluation where we're learning beside you, right? We're working with you all as you build your programs, trying to document all the successes and challenges. Sometimes as we all know, we learn a lot from mistakes. So we want to really know what's going on, we're not monitoring, we're not calling anyone out. we're actually capturing the rich detail of how these programs can actually work so that we can feed that information back to the state so that hopefully they'll keep funding the strategies that really work and that we can support ongoing funding for these programs. So that's very much the framework that we come from. So we really are hoping to be in partnership with all of you, and really I welcome hearing from you at any time if you have any concerns. Shannon and John and I talk monthly and sometimes more than monthly, and we really want to be your partner in this work. This is just kind of a really basic model of, of how we go about, sharing our tools and information, listening to what's going on, learning from you, and then coming back and adjusting. So we're getting ready to implement a survey, for example. We shared a draft with all of you. We've gotten input from all the EcSA sites, from the state staff as well, and from the technical advisory committee. So we shared a draft. We spent time listening to all the feedback. We're going to finalize that survey and then pilot it in the first 4 sites. We're going to find out, like, how did that work? Were there questions that participants didn't understand? We might need to then go back and adjust that instrument. And then we'll share it back out with all of you, and we can adjust some more if we need to. So that's our approach. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but I'm kind of moving along speedily. But feel free to put a chat in or, raise your hand and I will call on you. So here's a big high-level overview of the evaluation. And I know some of you may have seen this before already, but all the sites, all 12 sites, will have an initial interview with the evaluation team. We have a set of basic questions. I promise you, we are collecting all of your plans, your contract with the state, your reports. We don't want to make you have to repeat to us everything you've already written and spoken to the state about. So what we're trying to do is fill in the blanks, ask you some real-time implementation questions, and get a sense of where you're at and what your hopes and dreams for your program is early in the process. Then, because of really just because of limitations of resources, we're having half the programs will have site visits. We've already done virtual site visits with the first 4 sites. So 2 of the new sites will be chosen to have site visits that will happen this fall as they're starting up, just like we did with the 4 other programs a year ago. And then toward the end of this program, the time period, we will do a final site visit, and that will focus a lot more on talking with participants and partners and really getting a rich data source of people's experiences in the program and how the program has reached its outcomes or has fallen short in some ways, and why, and kind of lessons learned that we can share. And so because we cannot do site visits everywhere, we will do a final interview with the other 6 separately, just to make sure we check in with all of you and learn about your kind of high level findings, a sense of how your program went, talk about your data, and kind of how the program ran for you. And in order to really get more of a sense of how it's working for participants, and because it seemed to be an area that individual sites were wanting to do more, but did not have surveys, we decided to kind of go ahead and create a universal EcSA, client exit survey. And so that's the one that you've reviewed already, and we will be getting that data as an additional data source. And as I mentioned before, all your reports and data that you submit to ESD is also going to be part of the evaluation. We're trying to make use of all the information that you give to be really efficient in utilizing that data and to not have you all have to do too much work. If we're ever asking you to do too much work, just push back and we will try to make you do less extra work. So our goal is to not be a burden on you or your participants. In case anyone hadn't reviewed the exit survey, we've closed the period of input, but like I said, it won't be too late. You can always give us input, and we are expecting to revise the survey kind of one last time after we field it in 4 sites in December or January. At that time, after we've tweaked it, then we'll do a training for all of you. And also, you'll benefit from having learned how to do training with the first 4 sites, because all of your programs are so different. It's really a question to me whether every site needs individualized training. We are counting on you to actually administer the survey. You're going to have a link that you can text to people, you can email to people, you can put it up on computers in your office and ask people to sit and do it. When I just onboarded Miguel, he said we need to have a paper survey. There are going to be people, it will be in Spanish and English. He said there are people that will feel very uncomfortable getting on a computer, and I think we're going to have to do paper. So that was his gut feeling from, growing up in the community. That's what we need, feedback on, and we'll do whatever it takes so you guys can get clients feedback when they're leaving the program. So we're very much thinking that it's going to be individualized. On the other hand, we know that you guys have staff turnover, you're going to be onboarding staff, and I personally would like to have some tape recorded training that people could access anytime about what the survey is, the purpose, how to administer it. And Shannon, I think we'll put it on that resource site if we can, so that any EcSA staff who are coming on can go and learn, and that they don't have to wait for a training, or you guys can use that as a tool. So this is all under development, and you'll be hearing a lot more about it in January is my expectation. So what to expect next? You will be all having an initial phone interview in the fall, probably in September, assuming that contracting is moved along and everyone's got a coordinator and is up and running. At that initial interview, for the 2 sites that are going to have site visits, the site lead will work on setting that up with you. So I'm hoping that's going to be in September. And then, as I mentioned, we'll do the survey training in not before January. I think it's going to take your programs a little, a while to get up and going and actually exiting clients. So I will, and things can take longer than expected and planned. So we are flexible, and we will do this when it makes sense. So if any of you are looking at this and think it's a very unrealistic timeline, don't worry. We will work with you and the state staff. I was working on a revised timeline, Shannon, and I know I'd like to get you to have this slide. I'm not sure I hit it exactly right, but this is where we're at in the midst of our evaluation. As we're in starting Q3 of 2021. Time is flying. So here's how our kind of key activities are rolling out. And you can kind of get a whole sense of our timeline of activities. So I've covered a lot of information really fast, but I'd be happy to take any questions. And as I mentioned, please do. This is my cell phone, my email. There's an underscore between my difficult to spell first name and last name. I really do. I'm happy to hear from anyone anytime with questions.
This is Alex. I had a question if you can go back one slide to the timeline.
Sure.
So it appears that you're evaluating this program. Does that phase 2, does that include the existing EcSA programs? I'm a little confused by it being a midpoint unless you're just looking at the planning phase, which sort of is quarter 4 and quarter 1.
Yeah, so what it will be is, and it will focus on the first, the sort of the past year with the first 4 programs, and then how the initial planning phase is rolling out for the new sites. Yeah, it may be that a midpoint might be further along the line, but that's how it's a little, it's kind of, we had to adjust the evaluation based on unexpected, changes in the program. So the cadence may be a little bit off, and I hear you.
And then when you're talking about phone interviews, this is with staff, I'm assuming, in quarter 1.
Yes, that would be with the EcSA coordinator usually, and other staff that, want to participate. We can have more than one staff person on the interviews, but yeah, that's our expectation, that it would be with the EcSA coordinator.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Madeline. I was just going to check in and say we can work on this timeline a little bit too, because the Q3, it is Q3 of this year, but for the contract start dates, it's not Q3 for round 2 EcSA.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Are there any more questions?
Shannon, there was one in the chat. I'm having trouble finding it though.
This is Jordan with Pack Mountain. We have the question in the chat. It says, how will ETO data be implemented alongside the exit surveys? Because one of the things that we noticed is that the exit surveys contain a lot of demographic information that we're already collecting from the customers on the front end. So we're wondering why we would need to have a duplicative process to collect the same data.
That's a really great question. I'm really glad you asked. The survey is anonymous, and in order for us to disaggregate responses by race or by area of the state, we need to ask that demographic data, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to look at survey results, because we're not connecting the survey to the participant. It's anonymous.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Jordan. Is there anything else question-wise? Okay, thank you, Madeline. I really appreciate all that information. Sure. And yes, we will include the presentation in the materials that we distribute after the call. And so the next item on our agenda is to dive into the ETO guidance. And I'll go through the document rather quickly, and I'll allow time for comments. So feel free to raise questions as we go along, or you can wait until the very end. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, looks good.
Thank you. So for eligibility requirements, individuals receiving services through this contract must be enrolled in the Economic Security for All program of enrollment in ETO and receive a qualified WIOA service to trigger active participation. To be eligible for enrollment in EcSA, an individual must be determined eligible for the WIOA adult, youth, or dislocated worker programs and must have household income below 200% of the federal poverty level. EcSA participants may be co-enrolled into WIOA formula grants if they are eligible, but it is not required. Document EcSA eligibility determination in case notes based on local guidance for case note requirements. The process begins by navigating to the participant's dashboard and checking under program management forms to see if they have a WIOA eligibility application. And most of this is very familiar to all of you who do enrollments. So you can look at that a little bit more closely on your own. Program enrollment, you can take a new program enrollment touch point on the participant's dashboard by selecting new and take new from the program enrollment selection. Review the demographics at enrollment tab and ensure demographics are complete and accurate. These are the demographic, this is the demographic information that we would like to collect for this program. This is really important because we do a lot of presentations to different stakeholders and state level leaders, and all of this information really helps to just paint a complete picture of what the program is doing and who we're working with, and so it's very important. And then select EcSA as the program of enrollment, and you'll see that it is an option right there in your drop down. And input local program or contract if applicable for your local guidance. Complete the rest of the program enrollment tab. Save the touch point. Provide at least one of the services below, depending on your local process. Development of an IEP. Completion of the self-sufficiency calculator, which is required part of the program, and completion of another basic assessment service recorded in ETO. And the services, they're general services. WIOA services may only be provided to eligible participants who are enrolled in the EcSA program of enrollment. All WIOA career, training, work-based, and support services are allowable. Services provided should be based on the participant's career plan and assessments provided as part of the EcSA model. All WIOA services provided to participants must be recorded in ETO, and each service must be tied to the active program funding source. And there's a link to the services catalog. EcSA specific services, the self-sufficiency calculator, as I mentioned earlier, is required. Each EcSA program is required to utilize the calculator. The self-sufficiency calculator must be recorded in ETO at the time of assessment as a service to the participant as follows. Record this service, take a new individualized training and supportive service, select the service comprehensive.
Shannon?
Yeah.
Looks like Alex has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Where are we picking up what version of the calculator?
Oh, that's a good question. John, do you know that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole question. It cut out for a second. Could you repeat yourself, Alex? I'm sorry.
I was wondering where we pick up the appropriate version of the self-sufficiency calculator for this grant.
Oh, we can make sure to send out the link to that. I believe it's thecalculator.org, but we'll get the exact link and share it out as follow-up. It should be on some of our planning materials as well, but we'll make sure we send it out in the follow-up email, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can add it to this document too, so thank you for that. And then career plans. Career plans need to lead to the wage goal of $34,480. And let's see, that should be used as the basis to connect them to workforce training, career opportunities, and related supportive services. The career plan service must be recorded in ETO at the time of development as a service for the participant as follows. And then I'm sure most of you know how to do this. And then subsidized training. Training funded by WIOA is occupational skills training that has been approved on the eligible training provider list and leads to a credential needed for occupations with entry-level earnings at or above $3,480. Training funded in whole or in part through ITAs with WIOA funds must be recorded as occupational skills training in ETO. Other WIOA training services are not included in this definition of subsidized training. Record the service, take a new individualized training and supportive service, select the service occupational skills training and attach to the EcSA program of enrollment. Enter a date and outcome into this TP after the participant completes the service. And the other option there is trainings funded, or another option is training funded by partner resources. And this is really important. We want to track that to see the partnerships that you're developing and how other program funding is supporting these participants. So it must lead to a credential needed for occupations with entry-level earnings at or above the wage goal. Training funded by non-WIOA resources. For instance, the Washington College Grant must be recorded in ETO as training paid by other. Note that this service does not trigger or extend participation in ETO.
Shannon?
Yeah.
We have a couple questions, but I also wanted to just make sure we don't miss this point. So we have subsidized training as one of your key targets in your contract, and it's broken up into each of these buckets. And I know typically training paid for by others is kind of a wash as far as an outcome, but for EcSA it would be seen as a positive outcome, and we would take it as an indicator that participants are accessing, Washington College Grant or other resources to help pay for their training. And that's something that I know the governor's office and other statewide stakeholders are really interested in seeing as we move forward. So that's kind of the reason that we broke that out like that. I believe Jordan had a question, and then Alex also.
Thanks, John. That's helpful. Go ahead, Jordan.
Hi, this is Catherine with Pack Mountain. Just speaking of the subsidized training, am I clear in my interpretation that cohort trainings are not included in that since it's only ITAs indicated here?
That is correct, just for this definition.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Jordan, do you have a question?
That leads me
Sorry,
to
Pack Mountain's all in the same room.
Oh, okay. Great. Alex?
well, that actually leads me to 3 questions because I know that if you're funding cohort training, it goes into ETO as expanded training opportunities, but I don't quite understand if you're doing cohort training, why for EcSA purposes it wouldn't count as occupational training. I can give you they're all kind of related. The second question is we frequently mix and match funds in supporting training so that worker retraining or other scholarship funds and may pay part. WIOA may pay part. We also if they're getting FAFSA funds, we use the WIOA money to pay for some of the training costs so they can use FAFSA for living expenses. And I'm wondering, in other words, if we've got somebody co-enrolled, is it training paid by this contract or is it training paid by other, because even though it's WIOA, it's not coming out of this contract? My last question is, although it isn't per se called out, but other than for preparation for them entering employment, doing internships and such, but I'm wondering what the status is of OJT.
So I think those are very good questions, Alex. I think I know I can answer most of them. If I miss one, I apologize. So if it's paid for in part with WIOA, even a minimal part, then it should be captured as occupational skills training. If it is paid by WIOA, but by, let's say, WIOA Adult, then you could capture that as you would for WIOA Adult, and you would not necessarily need to capture that for EcSA, because we're going to pull any service that they received during the time of their enrollment in EcSA, whether it's funded by EcSA or another WIOA source.
On that one, John, wouldn't we have some activity in ETO under their EcSA affiliation?
Where we landed on that, and I think that was further on in the general services. It's just, if it's paid, you should tie it to whatever it's paid for. I think that's how most areas operate in general. So we were trying to make this as much as possible about the way that you would operate as a standard process, to try to make it not have to recreate the wheel on this. I'm not sure that answered your question, though. I just kind of went off on a little tangent.
Sort of. I'm guessing one way you might do it is in EcSA you'd have training paid by other, and in the 1B adult you'd have occupational training.
In that case, that would give us a duplicated number, because we would pull it from the adult program and we'd pull it from EcSA from the training paid for by other. Does that make sense?
Probably, when I get a chance to think about it. Okay.
You had another question. Yeah, go.
OJT, that would you just put that in there under as the activity in and of itself, because that's not subsidized occupational training in the context of classroom training, but it's going to lead to employment. So I'm assuming that would be a different ETO track.
Yeah, so any service that's not specifically called out in this document just goes back to, that section on general services. So you would capture it how you typically would for an OJT. And just, if it's paid for by EcSA, then you would tie it to the EcSA program of enrollment. And if it was paid for by adult, you would tie it to the adult program.
Okay, and I'm sorry for all the questions, but
no, these are good questions.
I'm impersonating our ETO expert, and these are questions she'd be asking.
And please let them look at this, and if there are key things we need to relook at, I'm definitely open to that, because we want to make sure that we're not missing anything. And I know there are some complexities in this.
Well, and while I got the floor, so I don't have to ask it later on, I see there's some specific EcSA activities in the that are going to be in the drop-down menus. Are those also going to be defined in the services catalog, or will we just go to this document to get the definitions?
They are already defined in the services catalog. I think Shannon might have sent two versions, and I think one had some services that were specific to Tacoma and Southwest. If you're looking at that version, it might be confusing, but the one that should be the final draft at this point should only include the one-to-one mentorship and the mentorship opportunity as optional services if your area is providing them. And those are both defined in the service catalog.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alex, I think you had another question that I didn't answer yet. I don't want to make it more difficult on myself, but I thought there was your very first question.
The first one was about goes back to an earlier question about cohort training. I mean, in in the meaningful sense, if you're funding 10 people, they all happen to be EcSA, and you're doing it on a cohort basis. That's occupational skill training. It doesn't, for whatever reasons, it's treated in ETO with a different title, but it is in spirit and content the same. So I don't know what's to be done about that.
Okay, and we landed on this language because of the way it's captured in the services in ETO. But that doesn't mean we have to be stuck on this. If you could make a note of that, Alex, and and maybe propose how you think we could handle that. There could be an opportunity where we, if it makes sense, broaden the definition of subsidized training to include cohort training, and we could pull it by occupational skills training or the other option that would pertain to cohort training. I need to think about that a little bit more. But if you could send us a quick note on that, we can take a look at that and check in with our policy folks to see what how we might want to approach that.
I'll try to do that because I'm not foreseeing that we would actually do a whole cohort totally funded out of EcSA because of the limited size of the contracts this year, but we might be pulling a cohort together, for example, in medical assisting or certified nursing assistants that partly was paid for by other WIOA and partly by EcSA, but it would all be they'd all be enrolled in expanded training capacity, which I think is the code for cohort training.
Mm-hmm. A key thing to point out too is that with this definition, we don't mean to limit it so that you couldn't do cohort training. It's just not currently included in the definition we have of subsidized training. So even if we didn't change the definition of subsidized training, that wouldn't be an indication that you couldn't provide cohort training. I just want to make sure that's clear also.
Guess that you write in there training funded in whole or part by individual training accounts or cohort training, whatever that definition is. I think it's called expanded training capacity. Somebody else might be able to help me out on this. Because I know I've done a lot of these for our pre-apprenticeship programs.
Okay. Yeah, Alex, we'll make a note of it. We can look into it and look at the service catalog and connect with Gary and his team to clean this up if we need to.
That's a really good question, because the cohorts are just a bunch of individuals that are being paid per person. Their training is per person within that group. So we would definitely want to capture it. And then Jordan said Pack Mountain can also help with that if needed, contracted training.
Sorry for my silence, Shannon. I'm just making some quick notes. I got all that.
Thanks for fielding those questions. That was helpful. And thanks for posing those, Alex. Really good questions. Okay, and then so we're almost through this guidance here. The mentorship is optional, and we kept it in here just because these are some examples. We definitely highly encourage mentorship, and I know a lot of you are doing that and have that planned into your programs and are doing it in different ways. There's one-to-one mentorship, as well as mentorship opportunities, which are more events, workshops. You can go a lot of different directions with that, and those are optional. Procedure for recording outcomes. So the employment outcome, create a new outcome, program completion touch point, select EcSA from the dropdown, complete outcome, touch point, data elements as appropriate for the participant. And this is really important, is actually entering the annualized wage, because that's how we're going to be pulling it out. It's multiplying the hour wage times the planned hours per week times the 52 weeks in the year. And then continuing at the grant end, the continuing subsidized training, which is another outcome. And so create a new outcome, program completion touch point. Again, select EcSA, and then complete outcome, program completion, touch point, data elements as appropriate for the participant. Select the option did not complete and enter an end date of the end of the grant period, which is March 31st, 2024.
It looks like Alex has a question, Shannon.
Oh, thanks. Yes, Alex? I think you're on mute, Alex. Do you have another question?
I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, okay. So that completes the ETO guidance review. Are there any more questions out there? on that piece. Okay, so we can then move on to the quarterly reports. There are going to be 2 reports due quarterly with EcSA, a narrative and an outcome report. So I will start with the narrative report and share this. So this report, I've also shared this for feedback as well. This follows the contract very closely, so it should not be any surprises of what we're looking to collect here. So it starts with an executive summary, and we want to know what's working well, and how has your EcSA program strengthened connections, specifically between partners overall in your region, and contributed to participant success in new and innovative ways. We're always trying to see the innovations that drive your programs. And then challenges, describe EcSA's greatest challenges during the reporting period and strategic plans to mitigate those challenges. We want to know about your partnerships, inclusive of individuals with lived experience in poverty, in design, planning, and implementation, and a review of quarterly performance with partners, addressing your challenges and identifying successes. Specifically, address partnerships that serve homeless populations. Coordinated recruitment and service delivery. We want to know, how are you recruiting people and what is working best for you? And how are you enrolling, assessing, and developing career plans for participants that lead to self-sufficiency earnings? How are you coordinating connections to supportive services, needs-related payments, SNAP, and/or other non-WIOA benefits based on participants' assessed need to ensure participants have access to available supports to further promote success? And if that's not happening, please track and share reasons for those not connecting to SNAP benefits. How are you coordinating with partners to support mentorship opportunities, supportive services, delivery, wraparound supports, offering as well as addressing personal and financial stability based on individual participant assessed need? Also in that section, how are you providing subsidized education and training or other workforce development opportunities to EcSA participants, including co-enrollment? And then connection to these other funding sources, the college grant, the Pell Grant, and other non-WIOA resources. And then here there's some space to indicate any previously unmentioned challenges, successes, and adaptations related to recruitment and service delivery efforts. Community of practice and initiative evaluation. Your success stories. We're very interested in hearing your success stories and sharing your success stories. So this section is really important, and we'd love to get pictures as well. Now that participants will be going out into actual trainings and on the job site, and whatever pictures participants feel comfortable sharing that we can use in our storytelling about the program. And what feedback are you receiving from program participants or people interested in EcSA, and how are you collecting this feedback? Do you anticipate employing any additional methods of gathering follow-up information or interest from participants and potential participants? And this section is also really important. We really want this program to be very much informed by the customer. And so I'm very curious to see all the different ways that you will go about bringing in the customer voice and how that impacts your guys' programs. And then down here, your planned expenditures versus your actual expenditures. And that is the entire narrative report.
Shannon, we got a question from South Central. Are we expected to submit a narrative for quarter ending June 2021? Do you want to? I can answer that, Shannon. If you're,
Go ahead.
No, we're not expecting any narratives or reporting to be submitted for the quarter ending in June. We see the partnership and implementation plan as the reporting for that quarter. And Mary asks about, do you have a photo release form so we can facilitate sharing pictures? Mary, how we've typically handled that is with the 4 pilots, each area had their own process for that, and we just confirmed with them before we used any of the pictures that they have received and have that documentation.
Yeah, and then I'll just add to the reports for the quarter ending in June. So for the quarterly meetings, the first meeting, I haven't sent out the invite yet, but the community of practice meetings that will be statewide, I will be looping you all into your first meeting will be in the beginning of December, and then it'll be every quarter going there forward. But I know that you're all just getting your program started, and you'll be really busy over the next quarter, and probably will have very little to report out at that point. So we'll get you started into those meetings. They were the peer-to-peer meetings, but we're now calling them community of practice, and that will be early December. So look for that invite. And does anybody else have questions on the narrative report?
Shannon, could I add one quick note on the success stories?
Yeah.
I feel like it could easily get overlooked that we're looking for success stories related to partnership too, and that's becoming more and more important from my perspective, because just as an example, we were talking with DSHS today, trying to get more kind of more structural and universal support for EcSA so that they could do, like a consistent set of discrete tasks in each area. And so anytime we have things that are working well with partners like DSHS or other local partners, those are really helpful in us telling the story and trying to get them to buy into more meaningful support on the ground. And also, Shannon recently presented with Jamilette from Benton Franklin to the governor in the Results Washington presentation, and he's really interested in hearing about those partnership stories too. And we're hoping that there will be some good stories that will help move the needle toward getting more meaningful engagement on the ground as we move forward.
Thanks, John.
Jordan has a question. Will this be accompanied by the performance budget report?
Yes, so that is the report that I'm now sharing. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
So it's not the budget, but it is all we're going to be collecting for this is these 5 categories at the top. WIOA eligible individuals below 200% of FPL who are enrolled, and then participants placed in subsidized training for employment at or above the wage goal, and participants completing the subsidized training. And this one is for the grant and the last
Shannon,
for the grant period.
Could you zoom in a little bit, please? There's some folks that can't see very well.
Oh, yeah. How's that? Okay. And then this one is all grayed out until the final quarter, where we'll be looking at if there are folks enrolled in training at the very end when the grant closes, and then participants entering employment at the 34,480. And then down here, these are additional services, your comprehensive and specialized assessment, your employment plans, financial literacy, pre-apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, OJTs, WEXs, customized cohort training, basic skills, supportive services, one-to-one mentoring, mentorship opportunities, and personal stability workshops.
Shannon, there's a question from Miranda. Did you share this in an email with the group?
I believe I did, but I may have only included the narrative, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I don't know if you all have seen this one. I'm not positive. I can look back, but this, I know I shared the narrative, but it may not have included this one.
Yeah,
so
it sounds like we didn't send that one, Shannon.
Yeah. So what I can do, I can give you a little extra time too if you the narrative, we're hoping to get feedback by the end of the week. And then if you need a little bit more time with this one, I can receive it until mid next week would be fine, just to give you a little more time to get feedback. Are there any questions or any comments at this point on this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask my question again because I see you've got customized cohort training as an other WIOA services, whereas I would consider that we were as a service provider, if we had put together a cohort to run for nursing assistant, and some or all of those individuals were EcSA participants, I would consider that they were placed in subsidized training.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah. So Alex, we're going to look at that. The key thing is we'll need to check in with the EcSA technical. What do we call it now? Technical Advisory Committee, to see how they feel about modifying that definition. We went back and forth with them a lot on that one, and so seeing how they feel about adding that in versus keeping it separate. But we'll approach that with them and then modify as we can.
And just FYI, I mean, typically if we were funding a cohort, we would go through the same assessment and having the person do all the data gathering that they would as if it was an individual ITA. And we do that in most cases, not necessarily for the pre-apprenticeship.
Gotcha. I mean, I think you're making a good case. We just have to put it together and send it off to them to see if they approve before we can move forward. But I think we're mostly on the same page on that.
Okay. Well, then the next part of the agenda is just going over next steps, and we're ahead of schedule, so we'll be able to finish the meeting a bit early. So our next steps are the partnership and implementation plan presentations are beginning tomorrow and will conclude on July 21st. The Technical Advisory Committee will have a week following the presentations to give feedback and recommendations. Within 2 weeks of your presentation, you will receive approval to launch your program or continue conversations on how to incorporate the TAC feedback before launching. We will work closely with any areas that do not initially receive the approval to ensure that you have the support you need to address any concerns identified by the committee. Is there any questions on that? Okay, and then we'll, if contract modifications are needed, we'll be working on them in August. And that's all I have. John, do you have anything you want to add?
Did we give a timeline for feedback on the narrative and outcome reports and the ETO guidance?
Yes, by the end of the week.
Okay.
Other than this, since I sprung this new outcomes report on you, sorry about that. That one, you can give me feedback through mid next week. Okay, with that, if there are no additional comments, thank you all for attending today. I'm looking forward to your presentations over the coming week, and have a great rest of your week.
Shannon, there's a question, have A19s been created? We will check on that with our funds management team. That there's been some confusion on that recently, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay, thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Shannon, I'll hang out and make sure that the recording is good to go.
Okay, so should I stop it now?
Yeah, you can stop it now.
Okay, stop recording.